As a physician or advanced practitioner, before you sign a contract, there's an important document that I want to bring to your attention. You more than likely haven't heard of, may not be aware of. I want to explain what it is, its value, potential concerns, and how it can possibly avoid potential problems and wasted months out of your life. By the end of this video, you'll know what an LOI and an LOA are, the benefits and things to be aware of, and why both sides would benefit from having one of these in place before moving forward. Now, first, I want to explain the difference per se between these two. And it's important to understand this is not a universally recognized definition. Sometimes you're going to hear clients or candidates or anyone, doesn't matter, using these two terms interchangeably. Technically, they're not. One is a waste of your time. The other is an extreme benefit to you. So what are we talking about? LOI is a letter of intent. An LOA is a letter of agreement. Technically, and again, these are fairly universal definitions, but make sure when you're speaking with a client moving forward with position that you understand what exactly they mean so that they're not using them interchangeably. An LOI is not really worth your time. A letter of intent is a very preliminary agreement where you basically agree to move forward with this position without having really explored too much about it. An LOA is different. An LOA is a bit deeper into the process. As you know, if you've ever had a job before, not only as a physician, if you're coming out of residency or fellowship, or you're looking for a new position, you understand even outside of the clinical world, the agreement, contracting, negotiating process can take time, much more so in the medical world. A letter of agreement differs from a letter of intent in that it's a term sheet. There is something set in place so you have an idea of what you're committing to. It's not just a vague, nebulous, I'm interested, let's move forward. You know what you're moving forward with. Again, make sure you understand the difference between these two. I do want to point out right from the start, LOIs and LOAs are not legally binding. And I want to talk about an analogy here that I used to use a lot. I used to spend a lot of time focusing when I was a recruiter, speaking to clients and to candidates on the value of having these. And again, my name is Bo Boyd. This is the Placement Rounds. I've recently started this after well over a decade of intense physician recruitment, marketing, sales, and consulting. I've placed over 100 doctors. I've been a consultant and lecturer. I've given talks on the physician shortage, physician well-being, practice health. I have a second channel, Overcoming with Bo Boyd, where I work with men coming through recovery. I've had a lot of experience myself going through that, and I've served in that capacity before, and I've had a lot of opportunities to work with clinicians as well. But this channel, I focus specifically on the clinical practice, wealth, career pathing, and the recruitment side, where I take the knowledge that I have, the things that I've done, the work that I've done. I've trained residents, I've spoken for MGMA, I've spoken on panels for Healthy Careers and other places, and give that to the candidate side, somewhat even the playing field, as most of the physician recruitment world is very client centric. There's great clients out there. There's horrible ones too. Either way, I want to help you as a job seeker. I believe in taking care of those who take care of us. Clinicians are important. If there's anything that you're interested in learning more about, feel free to reach out to me. I would love to work with you and continue doing that work. So with that, and I apologize for the long intro, let's get back into this specifically. LOIs and LOAs are not legally binding, as I said. So think about it this way again. An LOI is just a basic, hey, we just met, let's move forward. I just met you and this is crazy. Here's my number, so call me maybe. You don't really want that. It's not what you're interested in. The LOA is the term sheet. And I make this reference because one of the examples that I used to give quite a bit is the analogy of an engagement ring. An engagement ring is not legally binding. You are not legally married to that individual, but there is a pretty strong commitment on both sides to move forward exclusively with this individual and no one else. You move forward at the exclusion of anyone else. And this is what you want from the other side. If you're a client, you want this from the candidate. If you're a candidate, you want this from the client. You should be interviewing in multiple places. You should see what all is out there. Clients are doing that. That's just the way that it works. That's why you don't want to waste your time with an LOI. You don't want to get locked into, okay, well, I'm not going to move on if you don't have anything, or you don't have an idea of what it is you're going to move forward with. Again, think of the relationship analogy. You don't want to just meet someone that's single. Let's go ahead and move forward. You have no idea who they are, what their interests are, if you're compatible, if you guys will get along. An LOA is different. An LOA has a basic agreed upon structure. So think of an LOA. It has a term sheet included. It's very important to keep this as simple as possible. 1 page is best, 2 pages at most. Again, not legally binding. I'm not a contract attorney. I do want to emphasize this. I am not giving any kind of legal consultative advice. This is just for information and entertainment purposes. Hopefully it's beneficial to you. Now, let's explore that a little bit more. Why, if it's not legally binding, is it relevant? Well, there's a few reasons. One, it signals mutual good faith. There's a lot of time, effort, energy, emotional, physical, time away, financial investments involved with pursuing a position, or for a client, even pursuing a candidate. So you have a good faith commitment that we're in agreement, at least on these basic terms, and let's go ahead and start moving forward. Second, like an engagement ring, there's a commitment to exclusion. You can walk away at any time, so can the other side, but you're not seeing other people. You're at a point, in other words, where you're happy with what you're seeing enough to where you want to move forward. So you're not going to be interviewing other places. That's your commitment. Okay, I like where we're at. I'm in agreement. Let's move forward. I'm not going to be taking any other job interviews. And you, Mr. and Mrs. Client, are not going to be interviewing other candidates for this position. Also, these are the terms we've basically agreed to. And you really want the core basics in there. You want salary. How long is the contract? 1, 2 years? Is there a guarantee? Is there a sign-on bonus? Is there relocation reimbursement? Is it a partnership? How many years to partnership? If it's RVU, what's the RVU threshold? What are the hours? You want something basic in place. You want to try to walk this line of the most relevant, yet also as simple as possible. Are there benefits? Is there retirement? Again, I mentioned partnership. Are there additional ways to bonus? Depending on your specialty, are you half clinic, half hospital? Are you involved in any supervision of advanced practitioners or residents? Are there any teaching opportunities? You can do these 1-point bullet points and keep it very simple and have an idea, okay, this is what I'm interested in. Again, this is the value of having that LOA over the LOI, that term sheet, that commitment as you move forward. Additionally, it speeds up the actual contract. The contracting process is lengthy, and you want to make sure you get an attorney involved to go over everything. I've walked through contracts, again, not an attorney, but I've worked with residents and I've put together talks and slideshows and walked through everything that I've done over the years in helping to negotiate contracts, things to be aware of, things to be concerned of, what to make sure you're getting, not being taken advantage of. It's great, happy to do that, but you always want to make sure you see an attorney that can properly format all this with you. But when you have an LOA in place, you have a pretty strong foundation already. You have a foundation of what the contract's going to be. It makes it much more simpler than having to go back and forth, email after email after email, redlining, crossing stuff out. You can work off of a term sheet where you can do your negotiation there. When I was always the intermediary, I would try to get the best for the candidate and I would try to get best for the client, because my position was that when both sides are happy, then we have a win, because then everybody wants to work together for years down the road, and then I win and everyone wins and patients win, and it's a success. You don't want one side taking advantage of the other. And so LOAs were great. I would have an idea of what the candidate wanted, what the client wanted. I would try to open both sides up. What are you open to? What are you okay with? What are your non-negotiables? But basically the idea is you can have your disagreements, say that's not enough, or yeah, I'm going to need a second year retention bonus, or I need an extra week vacation, whatever it is. You can work on that. Once you have that down on an LOA, which is much more simpler if you're working off a 1 or 2 sheet document, it's much more easier to work forward and just build the contract immediately off of that. Move forward, get your credentialing, start moving, relocate, do all that stuff that you do. Additionally, there's a cost value there, because if you've already done a lot of this on the front end, you don't need to pay an attorney for extended periods of time. If you start fresh and you're going through all these negotiations, every email, every hour, every every phone call. There's money coming out of your pocket and the client's pockets to do what you could technically do on your own, with or without a recruiter. So by the time you get to the attorney, you can say, yeah, this is what we agreed on. As long as these terms are met, I'm happy. Make sure I'm not being taken advantage of, make sure my out clauses, everything's fine, and you can move forward with that. So it actually not only speeds up the contracting process, but it kind of de-risks it a little bit and can save money with the amount of time and investment that you have attorneys involved. And ultimately, just kind of wrapping it up, is there's a clear understanding of what both sides want. And if you cannot meet at that point, then it's not the place to move forward with for you or the other side. And you can figure that out without wasting all the time and money of moving forward with the contracting process. If there is just no agreement on the front end, move on. If it doesn't work for you, try your best, be reasonable. And I would say the exact same thing to your client. But once you have something in place, you've established that foundation that allows you to just move forward much more simply. And again, I mentioned this briefly, but I'll go over it again. What should be in there? Keep it short, keep it simple, but get what you need. Compensation. And that includes salary, your WRVU threshold and amount, any bonuses involved. You want to make sure you have your start date, your anticipated timeline, your patients per day or your census, your high-level overview of benefits and retirement and vacation, and is CME covered? Do you get time off? Do you get any kind of compensation? Is there any assistance with relocation, sign-on bonus? Is relocation, it's important to understand, is it a reimbursement or an upfront cost? A reimbursement means you pay for it, submit tickets, though it might be up to $10,000, for instance, and then you can invest in these moving costs, and they'll reimburse you up to that amount. I've worked with some clients that just said, we want this person, they can have the 10 grand up front, do whatever they want, on top of maybe a sign-on bonus. You want to get all these things in place. This is not the time to negotiate everything. You do not want to start getting into restrictive covenants. You can talk about malpractice. Is it a claims made or occurrence based? Is your tail coverage? Keep it a bullet point, but you don't want to get too in depth into things like out clauses and whatnot. There is an element of depth that the contract necessarily requires, and you want to make sure that you preserve or you reserve it for that. So addressing candidate concerns. There might be some hesitation. Well, in doing this, why would I want to stop looking at other opportunities when I don't have a contract in place? 100% valid. Look, at the end of the day, if this doesn't work for you, don't do it. But what you have to understand, and what I want to be speaking fairly to, is that this goes both sides. If this is something that you want and you're interested in, you got to give what you want in return. If you want that client to make that same promise that they are going to take down that job description, that recruiter's, if they're working with a recruiter, is going to stop working on it, that they're no longer going to be entertaining other candidates. If you're at a point where you want this, you've got to give it in return. And understand, being legally binding is positive in a couple of ways. One, it does not commit you to everything in there. If something changes, and I've had this happen, I've had great connections, and then sadly someone's in-laws pass away and they can't move. They have to stay there, or they have to go somewhere else, or something happens and they can't move forward. They're not in contractual violation. They can walk away. Additionally, you can still negotiate aspects of these as the contracting process continues. If something comes up, I would advise caution here, but it's a possibility. You're not locked into having to do exactly what this says. You can get to the point where you say, like, I've met with my spouse, my family, we talked about it. I know I agreed to this. It would help me out a lot if actually we could look at adjusting this. Is this something that we can do? However you want to address that. Always address being polite and respectful, by the way. Just as a side note, even if you don't take a job, make sure that denial is the nicest thing ever. Make it the nicest breakup ever, because you never know where you're going to be in the future, where you might want to be reaching back out to someone or reconnecting with someone. So don't ever burn any bridges. Just always be careful, respectful, but you're not locked in. I would try to diminish any concerns that you might have with moving forward with this, and encourage you to consider doing this as quite a positive option. Let's look at some red flags. You're working with a client who agrees to sign an LOA but drags their feet. Something might be amiss. The point of signing the LOA is to expedite and to move forward. You don't want someone who is locking you into place so that they can see if they can find something better. If they're dragging their feet, you want to be aware that's a red flag. At the point of the LOA, it should be, full speed ahead on both sides. Be very careful too, if you get a contract that has terms significantly or at all, it's up to you, that diverge from the agreed term sheet. As I said, you can negotiate. You want to be sure, because it's not legally binding, that you don't agree to a set of rules on both sides and then get a contract that has none of that. I remember when I worked for a very large accountable care organization, I was the sole recruiter consultant, and I wasn't even actually doing recruiting at this point. I was just doing a lot of educating. I was managing third-party vendors. I had signed relationships with individuals because we worked with private practices that we didn't own. They were independent. There was just a accountable care organization partnership with Medicare Shared Savings Program that was mutually beneficial. And I remember I was contracting with a company, and I'm not going to say who they are for propriety and respect purposes, but I had already negotiated some really good rates with companies to do recruiting like I used to as an agency. I worked with Merritt Hawkins. I worked with locumtenants.com, worked with DRW Health, and I had negotiated contracts with other individual companies, not those, that would work with our practices. And those are great. Those are great relationships. But those are for doctors, advanced practitioners, clinical executives, clinical academics. It was different when a lot of practices were saying we need MAs, we need billing, we need receptionists, we need office managers. We're struggling to find this. So I connected with this company, and I have no idea why this kept happening or how they stay in business, but we agreed probably about the third time. I said, I'm done. And we would go over things in depth. I would say, no, I need this for our practices. This is what we need. This is the pay. This is the expectation. This is the process. Oh, yeah, great. Perfect. Let's do that. Then I'd get a contract. Everything is violated. Everything is. And I wrote back and I said, I'm sorry, I think you sent the wrong contract to me, because none of this is what we talked about or agreed upon at all. And, well, we can't do that. You should have told me up front if you can't do that. But what I can't do now is work with you because I don't trust you. And so that just kind of brought that to an end. So be careful. LOAs are great. I don't see this a lot, by the way. This isn't something I think you should really have tons of concern about, but it does happen. Make sure that you do compare what that contract says with what you agreed to on the LOA. And be wary of a client that just tries to strong arm you or shut you down with some, this is it, this is all we got. Look, there are some hospital and health system and even practice bylaws and principles that they can't violate. That's going to happen sometimes. Not every job is for everyone. Not every candidate is for every client. Not every client is for every candidate. That's completely acceptable. But just be careful that you're not being taken advantage of, and that this is something, this good thing is being used in a negative way to strong arm you into something. So remember, a good LOA does not replace your contract. It makes the contract easier, quicker, more efficient, and less expensive for both sides. I hope this was helpful. Please let me know in the comments if you have any questions, if you have any agreements or disagreements. I'd love to hear your experiences. Share this video with anyone it would benefit from, and subscribe. I would certainly appreciate it as I try to continue building up my presence here on YouTube. Thank you so much.